She was thinking she was.
Good evening. Welcome to the Midstream David Show Midstream Reading Series for May 2023. I'm Paul Mattis. I'm the emergency fill-in host. Marg Walker organized all of this and recruited the readers, and then she had some surgery today. And surgery went fine, but the restrictions after the surgery were more than she thought. So anyway, I'm sure she'll be fine. So one of the perks of being the host is I get to read some of my own stuff. So that's where I'll start. This is called The Elm. In the end, the tree dies. The city comes with a bucket truck, chainsaws, and rope. Blocking off the street, they cut away the upper branches, then pull down the trunk, leaving sprays of sawdust, distant birdsong, and unfamiliar sky. This is the end of the world. The elm anchors our lives. We are its keeper, our duty sacred, our budget unquestioned. It happened slowly, branches coming off in storms, its neighbors succumbing one by one until it was alone. Every year, we watched it plant its children in the flower beds and lawn, doomed to wither once they grew tall enough. Then the telltale hole in the crown appeared. And today I realize I never bothered to count the rings. Our first reader is Caitlin Hibbard. Caitlin Hibbard's books are Sleeping Upside Down, Sweet Weight, and Simples, winner of the 2018 Howling Bird Press Poetry Prize. Journals where her poems have appeared include Barrow Street, Ars Medica, Nimrod, and Prairie Schooner. Editor of When We Become Weavers, Queer Female Poets on the Midwest Experience, she teaches at Minneapolis College, sings with one voice mixed chorus, and lives with many pets and her spouse Jan in St. Paul, Minnesota. Please visit CaitlinHibbard.com for more information.
Oh, a light would be awesome.
Yes. A little light on the.
There is a little light in this, like,
Is it working?
I don't know if it is.
There we go.
Oh, whoa, thank you. Technology. Gotta love it.
Can it turn off that the really bright one?
The last one you did your whole.
Thank you.
How about you in the back? Do you like the lighting? Would you like a cocktail? All right. So, thank you for coming. This is awesome. Should I be talking into this? I probably don't really need it, but I'm gonna.
Yes, you do.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to read some poems of spring and mothers and so on, things like that. So the first one is called Begin Again. All I have growing in my garden is a suggestion of rhubarb. Half a crown curled for pushing through ice and dead leaves, and what am I doing wrong? Isn't the point of perennials not having to do anything? Maybe they need to be divided, replanted. Meanwhile, May gears up outside my bedroom window, insolent birds, throbbing yellow-green of young trees. Time to go to my local hardware store, purveyors of hope in the shape of flanges, with seed packets for pansies and pinks, a toy tricked out like a miniature tractor, the red wheelbarrows upon which so much depends, garish caramels and mocha and banana rum, those hot pickles you can't buy anywhere else, pipe fittings in both brass and galvanized, squeegees and the poles to put them on, paint chips, paint brushes, paint remover paint, screens and screen repair, a self-serve popcorn machine that's never empty, giant bubble wands, a big bin of assorted tools in those impenetrable plastic shells that slice open your fingers, first aid supplies for when that happens, buckets, mops, and rags. And when did we become a people who need to buy rags? Colored keys, fobs to keep your keys in order, locks, compartments to put your keys in, and how do you get into those without the keys? Snow shovels, garden shovels, stakes and rakes, garbage bags, garbage cans, just the lid of the can if that's all you want, power tools, tulip bulbs, springs, and spring. How many people have already found creeping Charlie in their garden? Yeah. Well, you know, if you really find yourself disliking something intensely, the best thing to do is to take it to heart. So this is called Ode to Creeping Charlie. Aromatic perennial, evergreen creeper, you thrive in dense shade, yet tolerate the sun. Brought to this land by brewers and healers, you escaped cultivation, survived mower and rake. You feed the pinewood mason bee, take over my lawn, choke out bergamot and blazing star, those native flowers I cultivate in vain. There will always be more of you than I can ever remove, and yet you are my favorite weed to pull. I love that it must be done slowly, a gentle urgency in the fingers, a little tug to release your runners, knowing how firmly the earth is holding you, from first snow melt to first snowfall. Oh, ground ivy, field balm, cat's foot, ale hoof, runaway robin. I still hate it, but you know, I tried. So, with the burgeoning good weather, we also have more little critters in the yard. And I wrote this one a couple years ago based on an encounter with one of them. And it's called For the Greater Good. I saw the dog grab the rabbit, and it screamed, and I made her drop it, and of course it was still alive, but too hurt to get away. And I couldn't let it lie there twitching in agony, and the dog picked it up again, and dropped it again, and I knew I was being tested, knew I had to finish it off with the shovel. It was the only humane thing to do. Not that there's anything humane about keeping a hunting dog in a yard full of rodents. It was a pretty little rabbit, too, like they all are, baby soft and gray. And I brought the shovel down hard and flat, and one blow did not do it. I hit it again, twice. I did not want to chop it in half and squirt blood all over the grass, and who can see me doing this? Is my neighbor watching this butchery? As it was, some guts were spilling out when it finally stopped moving, and I was shaky and crazed as I pushed it into a plastic bag and put it in the trash. Knew I could not tell my spouse because they would be horrified. Though which would be worse to them, the fact that I had killed the rabbit, or the fact that I'd had no doubt I could kill it? I really cannot say. And maybe this is how it starts, in an army or a police force. Not the active desire to make something die, but the calm knowledge that you can and you will if the time should come. I killed a mouse in the bathtub a couple weeks ago, but I haven't written about that yet. There should be a sign on our house. Don't come in here. You're not going to live. Polio, 1962. One of the teenage neighbor girls had it. A skeletal, ethereal blonde, her skin translucent, dark circles beneath her eyes like inverse moons. One tiny leg and one regular one, her back like an S with an extra flourish at the bottom. Something otherworldly about her, like she shouldn't have lived in the first place. then landed in the wrong family with her jovial, lewd, red-faced father, her hysterical, fuzzy-haired, chain-smoking mother. Where could she have gotten it? I remember my parents' whispers about the virus, how it eats at the sheath of the nerves, and back then I thought it must be sexual. Or maybe she got it in the public swimming pool. I despised going there myself, hated how the concrete abraded my ancient suit, hated more the boys that swarmed beneath the surface, pulling at girls' suits, grabbing between our legs. I loathed the cold, dirty changing room, pinning the rusty key to my suit, despised the bright reflection of sun off too blue water, the screaming and shouting, that empty feeling in my stomach, those boys down there thrashing around still. So, here's another poem from my youth. That was, how many people in here have taken piano lessons? You have feelings about that, don't you? Yeah, I did too. And I love music. I come to this beautiful church every week. I sing with one voice, mixed chorus, as you heard in my bio. And we're having a concert on Raspberry Island in June. I have a few flyers, so afterwards, if you want one, let me know. But anyway, I love music, and I wish I still played the piano. I attempt to do it, but not very well anymore. Back then, here's what happened. The piano lesson. The piano lived in the room downstairs where I plodded through my childhood and Thompson's piano guides, running my fingers over the chipped ivory keys like Liberace, which made for a hazardous bliss. Aunt Gladys taught me how to play when I was 6 years old. She had the creamiest skin, despite growing up on the farm. Married late to an affable Irishman who made me my first cocktail, a daiquiri, strong and tangy and sweet. And right away at age 14, I loved that sunny, fuzzy feeling of watching the world go by like a show on TV. Over time, my left hand learned slower than the right, and I grew desperate to avoid the way she counted out loud, one-y and a two-y and a one-y and a two-y. Her command to concentrate on everything all at once. Head up, back straight, wrists even, hands slightly cupped, as if I could hold a little bird in each one. And I hated those little birds. Beneath my palms, shivering with fright, began plotting to get rid of Aunt Gladys. Not permanently, of course, just some elaborate scheme involving an emergency trip to Paris or something. Anything to keep her away from me. So when I found out she broke her arm in a car accident and wouldn't be teaching me anymore that summer, I was full of a terrible joy. In honor of Mother's Day, I have a couple poems about my mother and my relationship to her, but I wanted to read one. How's my time? How much, am I good? Because, well, I have a few of these books that came out in 2018. This is Simples. These are all poems based on women's voices in the Great Plains, in the prairie, at the turn of the 19th century, the late 1800s. Anyway, I wanted to read something from here because it's timely, because it's about birth control. Who knew that would still be timely now? But also because of one of the other readers, Sharon Schmielars, whose work I love and read a lot of when I was researching this book, because just of the various historical things that you've written about. So this is called The Fix, and it's based on a letter from between a husband and a wife that I found in an archive from the University of Nebraska. The Fix. Uriah had been gone a good 3 weeks. when she started to think she might be in a fix. Again. Already there were the other two babes and no work for him, accounting for his month-long trip to Grove City. He wrote back, said, "Don't stay with your folks in Minnesota too long. You might use some other mild medicine, but nothing very strong." The broker said tansy tea would be best. You will likely find some growing along the roadside. Steep together its bright yellow buttons and jagged leaves until the camphor smell almost overcomes you. And she had heard of 2 women who died drinking it. Folks said they took it for the hysteria, but everyone knew what that meant. Take a cup in the morning and another at night while fasting until you are healed of your affliction. She looked at her sleeping children, held the cup to her lips. And I don't know, there are no other letters from her in this archive, and I don't know if that is something I should read into or not. So I don't know if she drank the tea or what. I think she drank it. I do, yes. So, anyway, these last 3 are about me and my mother. How many people in here like coffee? And you know, there's this little tiny bit at the bottom of the pot. What do you do with that little bit? Do you like pour it into a cup or you dump it out? Well, that's not what my mom did because she was very frugal, because we grew up on a farm. How I became a feminist. Because she could not bear to waste a thing, my mother always drank the coffee dregs straight from the pot and dribbled on her chin, then wiped it up and called herself a pig. She didn't want to wash another cup or spend another minute at the sink. Or so she said. I think she lapped it up bitter and cold to brace her for the work of putting all our needs before her own. A woman's lot when living on a farm. And though she always said pig with a grin, it pains me still. I take mine good and warm and stay away from longings that conspire to come between a woman and desire. But I actually really do dig the coffee from the pot too. You know, I do that too. So I get it. Partly because, you know, sometimes as you age, things stop working so well, like, you know, your hands. This poem is called Arthritis. My hands no longer always do my bidding. Sometimes they send spoons flying over the counter and onto the floor, rip bigger holes in things I meant to mend. Just this morning, I spilled coffee while pouring it into my cup, struggled to open a bottle of pills while oatmeal pooled outside the bowl, remembered how my mother always said I was such a clumsy girl. Words of endearment or exasperation. Her being German, it was never quite clear which she meant. Probably some of both. She had it bad, in her hands too. Endured shots and surgeries never meant to cure it. Short-term fixes, one more reason to distrust doctors. I must have worn them down with kindness, my hands, I mean, which is why we mostly forgive our mothers, despite their deepest, most loving wounding. All of these poems are from a manuscript in progress that I'm working on right now. It's called Unblossoming, and it has to do with, I thought it was about aging in the body, but it turns out it's a lot about my mother too. Even though she's been gone for 13 years, somehow her absence has been really resonant for me through this writing process. So this last poem is called If Grief Were a Scar. If grief were a scar, I would never stop picking at it. It is a wound, It is wound around all of my days. I will not stop noticing her body there, not there, an emptiness filled, not filled. At her funeral, the church ladies told me she was proud of me. At her funeral, my queer lover and I were forced to sit behind my sister, her lawfully wedded husband, her children. Who really knows the heart of their mother? My mother's body is in mine, her shape is mine, her arthritis is mine, her devotion is mine, her mystery mine. I wore her winter coat a full year after she died. At her funeral, I turned away briefly, and the lid clicked shut, that satisfying sound, and the body was finally gone. And the body is never gone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin Hibbard. Gary Mavitt grew up in southern Ohio and lived in Wisconsin, South Carolina, and Maine before moving to Minnesota in 1989, all in the pursuit of a career in teaching analytical chemistry. Much of his time at work was spent writing lectures, handouts, proposals, articles, and a myriad of other communications. When time for these tasks permitted, he found the process of selecting carefully the best words in the best order both effective and even satisfying. Consequently, a transition to creative writing upon retirement from teaching science was not as radical a shift as it might sound at first. Gary and his wife Anne live in St. Paul within walking distance of their son, daughter-in-law, and 6-year-old granddaughter, who is often an inspiration for poems.
It's a real thrill for me to be included in the series with all these wonderful writers. I'd like to read as many poems as I can, so I think I'll just keep the chat short and just get on with it. This is called Brunch. I remember going to brunch with friends in Maine. The restaurant was bright and bustling. Van Gogh painted his best impression of September sun on the wall. Renoir arranged the flowers, and Vermeer filled glasses with water. Audrey Hepburn sat on my right, and Mary Travers was on my left. Across from us, Groucho Marx was building a house with a poker deck and dared Jacques Derrida to draw a card. Next to him, Marie Montessori was explaining to Martin Buber the virtues of learning to play the banjo, while Eleanor Roosevelt discussed with Miss Hepburn the influence of the Abenaki language on the dialect of English spoken around Poughkeepsie. Cinnamon, butter toast, salmon with dill sauce, maple syrup, strong coffee perfumed the air. John Lennon sang softly, and Lily Tomlin came to the table to take our orders. Audrey asked for an omelet, and Lily said omelets came with muffins. Do you want raspberry, blueberry, or peach? Yes, said Aubrey. Yes, what? The waitress said in her parental voice. Yes, please, said Aubrey gracefully. It was not a question of etiquette, it is a choice. Do you want a muffin with a raspberry, one with blueberry, or one with peach? Yes, smiled Audrey. I'll take one of each. Hide and seek. Grandpa, you don't hide good, she said as I stood in the pantry in clear view of the kitchen. In an effort to make me more competitive, she offered me her best spot. You hide under the chair and I'll go count. Indeed, it's a brilliant place for a 3-year-old to hide, or for a loaf of bread, or the family cat. For Grandpa, not so much. But analytical geometry is not on the curriculum at a preschool. There would be no particular persuasive power in a dimensional analysis. A polite thank you seemed to be the best response. Still, I felt guilty for not being there when her count reached 10 and she knelt to look. In my absence, she fell back on history. History is one of her best subjects. She can remember events from over half a lifetime ago. 5 minutes ago, Grandpa was in the pantry, but not now, nor was he behind the kitchen island or in the closet. She would have to apply scientific reasoning instead. But there were no unexplained observations, no bulging blankets on the sofa, no creaking stairs. Instead, she would have to do as any good scientist would. She would guess. That is, make a guess and then look for evidence to support that guess. And that is how she found me standing behind the curtain, by looking for evidence to support her guesses. That and a counterfeit meow coming from the window. Chair. Walking home from the bakery, I came upon an old chair in the alleyway. Its rich red leather upholstery, once worthy of a banker's office, now looked chafed and tattered. It had been the type of chair in which an 18-year-old boy might be made to wait in his rented tuxedo for a young lady adorned in taffeta and curls, whom he would barely recognize. It was a sturdy piece of furniture with husky armrests, shaped like rolled rugs, and a high back to lean the day's troubles into. It must have been a good place to sit and sip a cup of coffee or a glass of wine watching the snow fall, listening to Paul Simon, or to take a nap, like sitting in first class, head back, the inertia of liftoff pressing you down. Cats, too, would nap here in the afternoon sun, curled peacefully on the soft cushion, whereas teenagers preferred their spine against one armrest with legs dangling over the other, as Michelangelo imagined Jesus in his Pietà. In his time, the chair watched dozens of movies and swallowed pounds of popcorn, coins, and keys, as well as embraced feverish children wrapped in blankets. It was always at home at Thanksgiving and sat in the center of each family photo. Such was its steadfastness. The aroma of my warm bread reminded me of my own duty, so I tipped my hat to the chair to acknowledge its devotion and departed. This one's called Rainforest. The opening line is one I borrowed from Christian Gamba, our guide in Costa Rica. The egret in her wedding dress wades a watery wilderness and slyly drops a tasty fly, inviting a fish to swim by to share a little bite to eat. Nearby, a boa waits to catch the thrush that hesitates to leave the branch and so fly free, while monkeys fumble fruit from a tree, sending the fish below a treat. The acacia bribes a host of ants to ban leaf eaters and even plants that might stunt the saplings growing. Painful bites for the unknowing make unwanted visitors flee. Save for the little intrepid wren who drops a twig now and then, watching the ants investigate until the suspicion does abate and they treat his nest as more tree. Other clans of ants are porters of leafy greens cut like quarters that they use to cultivate a mold that feeds the whole estate in another kind of ant farm. These are stories the forest tells to those who look and listen well concerning predators and their prey, of symbiosis and decay, of things that scare, repel, and charm, tales of grace and adaptation revealed by close concentration, lessons for our contemplation Behind the trees the forest hides. If you want to see it, take a guide. I hope I have time for some more. Walking my baby back home. It's been a summer of hard-drinking mosquitoes and self-adhesive t-shirts, but kinder contact graced this night. Only the street lamps watched the couple meander the shadows. She asked him to teach her to tie a Windsor knot. He slipped off his necktie and slid it around her shoulders, reaching around her waist to take one end in each hand. You start with the wide side, much longer than the other. She clasped his wrists, his arms draped over her like a shawl. The wide end goes over the top, skimming over her collarless blouse. Through the loop, slow down. She leaned her ear against his temple. She could hear the surging surf. He drew the night in with one breath. Her hair smelled like honeysuckle. She turned around and wrapped her arms around his neck and pressed her wet lips against his, and standing there in the middle of the street, they invented kissing. At that very moment, the multiverse doubled. In this universe, they found themselves standing in front of a house. "Oh, my roommate left the light on for me," she said, and she ran up to the door. "But you still have my tie," he protested. She turned and smiled. "You'll have to come back tomorrow and pick it up." Aliases. The game seemed harmless enough at the time. We pretended to be someone famous, pretending to be someone obscure when waiting for a table at a restaurant. At the Ovens of Brittany, we gave the name Manet or Debussy. At Paisan's Pizza, we answered to Martinelli or Marconi. The charade once moved us up in the waiting line, even though that was not our goal. It was only a little amusement until our 5-year-old son objected. "That's not our name," he protested. Somehow he knew that the world was a dangerous place, but the world operated by rules, and the rules kept him safe. We were violating those rules, and he was upset. We retired that game and hoped that there would be no psychological or karmic damage for our indiscretion. Perhaps we should have been wiser about the integrity of names. To the ancients, names carried special potency, and an alias was a cloak of deception. Speaking an enemy's real name diminished his power. Rumpelstiltskin's magic vanished when his name was revealed. But what about Juliet's conjecture about the sweetness of roses? Bill wondered if his name shaped his personality. So one summer, he went by Nathan on an archaeological dig in a place where no one had met him before. In the fall, he concluded that even as Nathan, he showed up as Bill. As he readied his return to London, a comely colleague confided that she too would be in London later in the year. He was thrilled and wrote out his address, inviting her to look him up. Then he thought he should tell her. "In London, people call me William," he said. "Now let this be a lesson to Romeo. Roses are roses are roses, and don't tell Juliet otherwise." Bill never heard from her again. And one last one that was inspired by Lewis Carroll. It's called Sleep. Late at night when he goes to bed, browsing a book or poem, he sings the fireflies to sleep and bids the muses roam the land of imagination to fetch their stories home. On the back of his eyelids they paint hallucinations of flying around the house, talking to vegetation, and other eerie things inviting interpretation. of feeling lost at great cost in melting railroad stations, of missing trains, of missing meetings with his boss and Russian delegations, or standing naked in front of well-dressed congregations. Sometimes he gets out of bed. Often he needs to pee. Mostly his body goes along. At times his mind walks free. Normally he scorns the light. Now and then he bangs his knee. After the theater closes and all the drama's gone, housekeeping springs into action. The night shift carries on. The physical plant is made ready for the coming dawn. The head custodian clears out the rubble of the day. Whose home run beat the White Sox? How many miles to Taipei? Casual conversation and things he forgot to say. Some pictures proved worth keeping. A few facts should be retained. Pathways between pixels should be mended and maintained. Models, motions, and meanings must be filed and sustained. Tak means yes in Polish. Dziękuję means thank you. His niece resembles grandma. E equals H times new. B diminished resolves to C. Viruses cause the flu. Ultimately, this jumble becomes organized instead. When the morning breaks and he finally gets out of bed, why should he feel rested with such humbug in his head? Thank you.
Thank you, Gary Babbitt. A wise man once said that people who love poetry and don't buy poetry books are cheap sons of bitches. There are books for sale, and you should buy some. I remember when Midstream was over on Lake Street in our old location, David Stove, the founder of the series, took tremendous satisfaction in successfully pronouncing Schmielars. Sharon Schmielars was born and raised in Mobert, South Dakota, and spent 30 years of her adult life in Minnesota teaching German. She is the 2021 South Dakota Poet of Merit. Kirkus Reviews has described her poetry as thoughtful, bold, humorous, earthy, and humane. Kirkus Reviews also named her The Widow's House 2016 and the J Horoscope 2019 one of the 100 best indie books of those years. A new book in spring 2023, her 14th, is Duet in the Little Blue Church. Please welcome Sharon Schmielars.
I didn't think I'd be this cane for such a short walk, but after sitting so long, the legs get kind of stiff. Isn't it wonderful? It's a May evening, and there are people who are actually interested in listening to poetry, and they have gathered, and that is wonderful. And I want to thank you and Mark Walker, who isn't here, and I want to thank Richard Terrell and Diane Jarvie, and let's not forget Mimi Jennings, who really have been keeping this reading series going. So is the mic okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm going to start with the poem that this book is named after, Duet in the Little Blue House, Church. I'm not nervous. Duet in the Little Blue Church. Listening to him, you'd think we too sang the way the saved sing. making the connection between loss and love, holding its music, cracking stars, my dad's bass to my alto. Listening to him, you'd think sorrow our beacon, joy the rose, light over snow. You'd even think disappointment, sitting in the back pew, unfrozen from frowning, had opened its mouth as echo. Knabe is the name of a piano. Some of you may know that. It's also the German word for boy, but here it means piano. They come humming. What is the keyboard but a variation on a piano, on a table? A trough in ivory and ebony for all the hungry to come to and be soothed by food's music. His head is bowed like the pianist at an old Knabe. Grandfather Gottlieb at the table flexes his thick speckled fingers over the plate and begins to hum for the 15,633rd time. Komm, Herr Jesu, sei unser Gast und segne, was du uns bescheret hast. Amen. Then he lifts fork and knife to the sausage and snaps the fried skin. Eating is a reminder of your link in the great chain of being. Though grandfather, der Gottlieb, never knew life by that name. I do, and I sit alone, remembering the power in rings and chains. I said no place at my table for old names, but still they come, down aisles in waist-high wheat fields, towards my table, single file, out of groves of ashes, black-scarfed, with a ring in one ear, big-bellied Germans from Russia, they come humming. Homecoming. At midnight, the man comes home from his shift. He pulls a chair up to his daughter's bed. Where's your mother? The girl pretends to sleep. Her braids sprawl across the pillow. She's very near, behind the Hollywood headboard, in the V-space in the corner where she slept, close to the girl for a week now. He asks again, not nice anymore. Where is she? Slowly, she crawls out. The girl braces for her mother's next beating, but he pushes the chair back instead. He glares at his wife. He goes into their bed. She follows in the still night. In the morning, they sit at their regular places at the table. Do not disturb. Do not disturb the sea in this house. Do not make waves by leaping to fear. Even a wake like muskrats through reeds upsets the house Neptune, the angry face behind trident and storm. Do not think less of yourself caged, longing like the shipwrecked for shore. Even boats fail here. Their hulks quaver underwater among wrecks of armchairs, tables, beds, shadowed, stumps in channels of light. Ella's Pies. I've never read this poem out loud to anybody before, so this is going to be interesting to me. It has 5 sections. Ella's Pies. Roll the dough out, stretch it over the pie plate, thumb all around the pie plate's rim, If the crust tears, roll it up and do it over again, belly bound to the kitchen counter. For how many hours? Let us count. At least 2 pies a week, winter or summer. Add 5 extra pies at the holidays. Subtract pies baked for church dinners. Sum so far, 52 times 2 equals 104, plus 15 equals 119 a year. At 1 hour per pie, round this out to 120 hours, times 1945 to 1995 equals 50 years. If my math is correct, 1 year, I didn't count Depression years. Extra flour and lard were rare. My mother spent 1 year of her life baking pies. Only 1 year? Why does her sentence seem longer, like 8,765.82 years? 525, 949 minutes in a year. Siri tells me, and 8,765.82 hours per year. Does the opposite, happiness, weigh in, then in seconds? Fast flying, uncommon? How much was Ella paid? She in the pantheon of pie makers. The world of it smells good in here. By the hour, pie, year, or second, consider the possibilities. It may be A or B, C or D, or all of the above. Ha! Trick question. Ella the pie baker, who lives in the house of Zeus, sweats without pay. 0 is 0. Minnesota Betty's Pies on Highway 61, a familiar location for every North Shore tourist, pays her crew by the hour and or by the pie. Wages figured into the pie's price. We all expect that. No free lunch, no free pie. I wonder how much Betty makes a year. It's been years since I've wanted pies or made one. You know how hours go by, fleet as an Audi on the open road or stalled beside a highway in Missouri. So learn addition, develop a good nose. One thing pie makers know in their blood and won't find in a cookbook: get up early in summer, bake when the house is coolest, cool down Zeus with pie for evening dessert. Those seconds, they're our gentles, my father. Apple, banana, raisin, prune, mincemeat, lemon, meringue, pumpkin, and peach. Ella, where are you? Here, Lord, sliding a pie into the oven. I'll have just a sliver of each. Light, warmth, life, African violet on the windowsill. This poem is for the millions who were starved to death in Ukraine. It happened in 1932 the first time, 33. It is called a Holodomor, which is a man-made famine, and the man is Stalin, and the people who starved are Ukrainians. For the millions who were starved to death in Ukraine. In the lands of etc. and the recurring et al., where genocides come and go, will be and have been ordered on a timetable by the Emperor of Madness. A footpath through a field leads to the hollow where a body collapsed and its life passed, a life that in the afterwards continues in saved letters and rumors. and a man cannot endure this for a long time. There are 8 in our family. Have sent to Poland all the clothes we could sell for food. She ate her baby. He would have died anyway. The clothes chest empty, the grass picked clean, insects and birds long ago eaten. Well, I do this every once in a while. I copy down the wrong number. So, I'm going to have to, oh, I hate this when poets do it. It's so sloppy. All right, here we go, I think. I think that came from Colleen's book. Yes, 125. Okay. My husband Tad and his sister and mother and father were refugees from the Soviet Union. And one thing my father-in-law really liked to do was to go down alleys because, as he said, Americans throw away such good stuff. And one of those things was a Christmas cactus. So this is a takeoff on that. It's called A Christmas Story of a Sort. For behold, Erica's Christmas cactus blooms again. Long after her death and its journey to our house from her apartment where the cactus flourished in the room's desert air, the way some refugees cross borders like years, arriving at a window after a long dark spell on a renamed street. In denial of the room landed in, a fire trap of cords, some snaking up a wall, some creeping along a baseboard, one taped to a table leg. On a hanger, the coquettish white slip clung to the gray seersucker suit found in the bundle from a rummage sale. Ich war einmal leichtsinnig. I was frivolous once, Erica sighed, as if time were fragrant or water sipped from a china cup in the German Academy in St. Petersburg. Oh, to stay in 1912, decades before a stroke did her in, before the world stood her up, turned frivolous twit into Putzfrau, arch-nosed bearer of an American rest home's shit pans. So who would have thought, after a long silent exile, a flowering would return to Erica's cactus with such eclat? Risen on stems, dry as Jessie's root, belting out protest at any absence of light in the world. So I think my time is up. I have time for just one more short one. And I'm going to give you a choice. Numbers 1, 2, or 3. It's a downer. Sorrowful. It's death, but it's an upper. And the third is death, but amazement. Which will it be? 1?
Three.
Is it 3?
Let's go 3.
I see 3. All right. Death, but amazement. Okay, that is 190. Talk. To say something and have someone near enough to hear, even comment. Something small like, it's windy out, when closing the bedroom blinds plans for the night. What was once so possible, common, redundant, seems to be now some passionate miracle. Tomorrow, the woman standing outside the church told me, tomorrow is divine mercy. Tomorrow, doors will be unlocked. They're still kind of locked at my husband's death. Thank you, you've been a great audience.
The church gives us this space for free. They set it up, they tear it down. All we have to do is show up and enjoy ourselves. So if you feel compelled to make a contribution, this is your chance. Jeremiah Gamble makes an honest living fabricating stories and pretending to be other people. He's a playwright, singer-actor, librettist, poet, songwriter, storyteller, and producer who has been working professionally in the Twin Cities for over 25 years. He's usually busy running 2 theater companies with his wife Vanessa, Theater for the Thirsty, their touring company, and their newer company, Bucket Brigade, which produces new works in their St. Paul West 7th neighborhood. His original plays and musicals have been produced to critical acclaim at theaters including Yellow Tree Theater, the Southern Theater, and 4th Street Theater. He's a published children's author, member of the Dramatists Guild, participant in Nautilus Music Theater's Composer Librettist Studio, father of 3, and all-around creative noodler, Jeremiah Gamble.
It's an honor to be with you this evening and to be among these great poets. As a playwright, I write from a place of passion and pressure. It's productive, but it's hard on the engine. And I've been doing that for 30 years, and poetry has been a rhythm I've been leaning into lately, and it comes from a place of gentle curiosity, and that has been a gift. Morning catch. I heard the siren song, then spied a squirrel, perfectly perched on the peak of a house, a masthead on a white ship. As I sailed past down the sidewalk toward the coffee shop at the end of my block, where I anchored, threw out a line, leaned back, tipped my hat, and slowly started to reel the day in. The birdhouse. The birdhouse is our house, their nest situated just below the eaves, inside a dented vent they've modified to their liking. I'm not sure the exact number of tenants, but they are a chatty family. They flit about the yard, never going far on their errant errands, then always returning to that happy place we all call home. As for rent, they pay in their own way, as every day, little by little, they've been teaching me how to fly. Abundance. Abundance is a big, round, glorious word, bulging with goodness, like a peach in season. This peach, in fact, the one I'm currently eating, the third perfect peach I've gracelessly devoured in as many days, having just picked 35 pounds at an orchard in Michigan. There were peaches on the trees, peaches on the ground, peaches upon peaches in my bag, and now a peach in my hand, and some on my chin, and more in the fridge, and a smudge on this page full of peaches.
Yes.
They're so good. And this was a poem that came from our trip to Costa Rica. No pictures, please. I don't want a picture of this moment, not of this delicate fern that ripples when I barely touch it, not of the curious pale fruit fallen on the path, not of the impossibly blue sky, nor of the mist hanging in the valley just now obscuring the green mountain. I don't want this moment to last. What I really want is to last in this moment, so that later, much later, on the pavement under a gray curtain of cloud, I remember. The future. The dishwasher repairman is coming, ever 2 weeks away. And the part we need, some jumble of numbers, letters, and a haphazard dash, is being assembled atom by atom. And will arrive someday by flying car. True story. Thursday. I am not quite ready for the cold floor, the search for socks, the trudge down the stairs to face the empty lunch boxes, the fridge full of ideas all useless, and that unwinnable game, the dishes. So I lie here a moment more, staring at the ceiling fan gilded in dust. I sigh and stir, swing my legs over the side to test the day with my toe. Brr. Unclassified melancholy. It could be from my long list of lost things, wordless tunes of regret, the math of all I've measured that's fallen short. Careless and careful words wadded in a knot, names, faces, and places stirred by senses, and this deep, deep well, water so cold it aches. I don't dare diagnose. To do so might frighten this flock of curious birds away. I let them linger. They're not bad company. Some draw so close I can almost touch them. My new poem. My new poem will not be the bread and wine, nor the wineskin. It will not contain a full moon, a glassy lake, a breathless young couple. It will not be fae dancing wildly just beyond the firelight. It will not mention the French painter, the name of their painting, or venture a guess at what it all means. It will be a bright new sock, pulled onto my cold foot that at the last moment surprises my toe with a tug that takes my breath away. Reverse psychology. My mind flips with wash, wish, and posh, pish, a turvy, topsy, mash, mish, crossed Chris, and nilly willy, all akimbo with jumbo mumbo. Like Janus, I'm of two minds on each matter. Does it matter where my minds wind up? Who's to say? Really, I can see both sides. I also wrote this in 2 columns and discovered that I could read them across the columns as well. My mind all akimbo, flops, flips with jumbo mumbo wash wish like Janus, and I'm of 2 minds, posh pish on each matter. At topsy turfy doesn't matter, mash mish where my minds cross Chris wind up, and who's to say, nilly willy really, I can see both sides. It's like reading Fox and Socks to my kids. I also love writing poems about my dog. One thing I know for certain is that in the busiest moment of the busiest week, my dog will return from her backyard business, dragging her behind on our welcome mat, leaving a smear, pause, and give me a look. I'll lift her tail, survey the damage, scoop her in my arms, trudge up the stairs, set her in the tub, strip to my underwear, run the bath drain plug out, and with a cloudy mason jar begin to administer ablutions to her matted backside, until, bit by bit, the knot loosens, the mess falls away, to reveal her pink puckered rump. I'll rinse the tub and rinse again, then proceed to slowly bathe her, massage her, hold her, and sigh. Just sigh. Again, that good thing you told yourself a while ago, say it again. Trigger warning, this is about snow. Snow day. It seems the prayers of 1,000,000 children have been answered. Everything's covered in a foot of snow, school included. It makes me wonder what sort of glories the grown-ups might call down if we somehow manage to muster that kind of faith and actually come to a consensus on what fresh goodness could befall us all. Poems also help me revisit myself, my past, my family. This is the woods between worlds. I'm walking in the woods between 2 worlds. Perfect pines in rows that seem to go on until I am a boy. In year-old sneakers, picking up pine cones, fingers tacky with sap, I taste it and lay on moss and drifts of dry needles as the sky widens and the trees sing of names I want to know. Desperately, I want to know that boy, those names. That's why I keep coming back here. My grandma, Marlene. Grandma Marlene gave me a brochure on the Antichrist when I was in the 1st grade. She would make me sit and listen as she read scripture from her holy Bible, the biggest I'd ever seen. She'd offer me raisins, oats, barley, flax, and nuts concealed in the form of a cookie. I'd munch and listen warily, but was often captured by her enraptured nature as she spoke of Yahweh's love and judgment, that his fire was for refinement, not damnation. Don't you see? All will be saved, she'd sigh. Then she'd lean in, trembling, tears in eyes, both hands on my shoulders, and say, "Isn't it glorious?" My grandma had a fearsome, blessed fire. I feel it now. This is about my father. The billboard had my face on it, though it just didn't look right, according to my dad, who designed it. So under cover of night, with stepladder in hand, he scaled to the base of the broad ad that looked over the freeway from Clear Lake to Mason City, leaned his ladder against it, and ascended higher to eye level, mine, to paint. He shoved his free hand into his pocket, squeezed some paint from a tube into his palm, and in this way touched it up. The ad is long gone, as is the billboard, though I imagine if both were standing today, one might notice in the face of the boy the wet paint. Chariots. I kneel, reach out and touch the slab of stone resting at the base of the white oak, surrounded by a clutch of birch witnesses. A breeze tugs my shoulder, and I remember the fierce wind that day your ashes were scattered. You rode off like Elijah in his fiery chariot. Then I recall how my father, your son, would sit and listen, lights off in the living room, to the soundtrack of Chariots of Fire again and again, as I kneeled in the room's center to let the sound shake me. And here I am, on my knees in the center, touching stone, touching you, him, and the wind, shaking me as I wait for my ride. Still life. This hat, this dark blue derby, smooth and sloped, dotted with little clusters of white stitching and labeled Gorin Brothers, is the nicest hat I own by far, though it's a hand-me-down from my younger sister, Jessa, who loved blue and fancy hats and fine cocktails made with Saint Germain, and who'd tip her hat, this hat, to the hummingbirds like I do now, the whir of her wings stirring my heart a moment before she's gone. And my final poem for you this evening. A poem for your pocket. Tuck a poem in your pocket. Any one will do. Inscribed on a scrap of bright yellow paper. And when you need it, it will be there. Dog-eared and creased like veins in a leaf. And someday, when you're consumed by laundry and a Thursday, you will find it freed into yellow bits, tumbled and tossed amidst pairless socks and old jeans. Let the mess overwhelm you. And slowly, slowly pick up the pieces.
All right, let's have a hand for all of our readers. Thank you very much. Midstream will be on hiatus in June, so the next reading will be in July. The host will be Diane Jarvenpaugh, and the readers will be Claire Wallenholm, Tracy Youngblom, Greg Watson, and Carol Rux. If you want more information, you can go to our website, midstreamreadingseries.wordpress.com. If you want to get on our mailing list, come ask me and I'll scribble it on a piece of paper. And we'll see you in July. Thank you.